Hey guys, welcome to the fourth video in my Python for Everybody series. In this video we're going to solve the exercises in chapter 5, which had discussed the topic of iteration. So let's get started with the first exercise. In the first one we just need to write a program which repeatedly reads numbers until the user enters done. So basically for that we have to implement an infinite loop which we need to break when a certain input is given by the user, in this case the string done. So when this string done is entered, we need to print out the total, the count, the average of the numbers. If the user enters anything other than the number, then we can detect their mistake using try and except. Okay, let's try to write this. First of all, since we need to calculate the total, the count, and the average. First, we need to declare a total, which will be 0. First, also a count, which we also initialize at 0. And now, since we need an infinite loop, we will use a while loop and while true, which means that the condition will be always true and the loop will be continuous, will be executed in infinity unless we break it. Okay, so we want to get an input from the user. So let's call this into a string value, since we are going to take it as a string. It will be using the function input, enter a number. Okay, so after we take the number, we take the string value. We need to check if it's really a number. So for that, we need to use try and except. So try to convert this string to a number. If it can be converted to a number, then we already have a correct input from the user. So if this string value can be converted into a float, then everything is working fine. And if that isn't true, then we need to handle this exception. And in that case, we need just to print. We need to detect the mistake and print an error message, which should be invalid input. And if the user gives an invalid input, we don't want to continue executing this iteration of the loop, so we just write continue, so it continues with the next iteration. Okay, so after we get the value from the user, we need to calculate also the sum and the total and the count. So for that, for each number we get, each value, we add it to the total. So we have the sum of all the numbers, and we also increase the count by 1 for each iteration. So the total will be total equals the value. Okay, so we just increment the total by the value, and we increment the count by 1. Okay, there's a shorthand version for these two, but we don't need it at the moment. Okay, so after this while loop, oh, we forgot about the breaking of the loop, where we need to break it. So after we get the input, we first check if the input is a string done. If string equals done, then we break the loop. Okay, that's pretty easy, pretty straightforward. So this is everything we need inside our loop. Now that we have the total and the count, we can just print it. So we need to print um, total, count, and average. So we can print total here, count, and the average should be the total divided by the count. Okay, let's try to run this. Enter a number, 10, 4, 2, and I'm going to enter done. Okay, so that seems to be correct. The count is 3, the sum is 16, and the average is 5.3. That seems to be working fine. So, this is all we need for this exercise. We already did the try except block, we did the calculations, and we also check for the input done. Okay, let's get on with the next one. So, we need to write another program that prompts for a list of numbers, but in the end it just prints the maximum and the minimum instead of the average. Okay, let's copy this code first so we can modify it according to our needs. Okay, we don't need the total, we're gonna need the count. So we get the input, if it's done then we break it, we try to convert it to the float, and then we get if we get an exception then we print an invalid input and the continue. Okay, so that's this is the part we don't need. So now first, so we should have an initial value for the minimum and the maximum, and that should be the first value we get from the user. But to ensure that it is the first value, then we just need to check if the count is 0. Count will be 0 only in the first iteration because we will increase it. So if count is equal to 0, then we specify that the min value is equal to value. Also, the max value is equal to value. So because we need to set it up to an initial value, and then we can compare it to the other numbers that the user gives as an input. Okay, so then we can write here an elif condition. So if it's not the first iteration, then we need to check if value is smaller than the minimum value, than the current minimum value, then the new min value will be the value we have at this, which the user has inputted at this iteration. And then we can write another elif. If the value is bigger than the max value, then we can set up the max value to be the current val on this iteration. Okay, and in the end we just increment the count by 1 so that we make sure that this code here is executed only once, only in the beginning. Okay, so maybe this is a bit more complicated than you thought, but I couldn't think any other way to solve this exercise without using lists, because lists will be introduced in the next chapters. So I just try to find a solution without using lists. Okay, so now we have the min and the max. So we just print here min and max. Okay, let's try this out. So I give them number 45, 23, 12, 0, -1, and then I want it to be done. So -1 is the minimum and 45 is the maximum. That seems to be working fine. Okay, so anything. Oh, we also need to check for the invalid input, if this works or not. So let's run it again. So I'm going to give 23, 11. Now I'm going to give an invalid input. So I get an invalid input and I continue to the next iteration. I give 0 and then I want to be done with it. So I have 0 as a minimum and 23 as a max. Okay guys, so this is my solution. If you have a better suggestion on how to solve this exercise, please leave a comment below. I hope you find this helpful. So thank you for watching. Don't forget to check out my Twitter and Instagram. I'll see you in the next one. Bye bye.